everyone, it's Elaine. Welcome back to my YouTube channel after a very long break. I'm really excited to be sharing content here again on my channel, and I hope you really enjoy the videos that I'm going to be sharing over the next few months. So to start off with, I thought I would join the Lawnfawnatics challenge for the current challenge, which is lots of heart, and I believe this is challenge number 117. So to start off with, I have a piece of Bristol smooth cardstock here, and I'm bringing in the shades Worn Lipstick to start off with, and I'm going to be blending a light colour of that all over this panel. Just a light layer, nothing too fancy, and not being too careful about any splotches because we are going to be distressing it a little bit later on. In fact, I don't actually end up keeping this colour, but we will talk about that as the card progresses. So once I've got some colour all over that panel, I'm then going to come in with a slightly darker colour, which is Festive Berries, blending that along the edges so that we've got a nice focal point towards the centre of this cardstock. I believe this cardstock was 5.5 or slightly larger than 5.5 inches by 4.25. That's what I thought, but as you'll see a little bit later on, I did cut it the wrong size, but that's okay because we can work with that. And then I'm coming in with this liquid Stardust, I believe, and I've smushed some Festive Berries onto my glass mat, loosen that up with the liquid Stardust, and then got this fan brush here and splattering that all over that panel. And then I just going back in a little bit more to loosen up that ink, just splattering that all over. I'm going to set that aside to dry, and while I do that, I have also cut this giant XOXO from some more Bristol smooth cardstock, and I'm using the same colours, Worn Lipstick to start off with. I'm just focusing that colour towards the top, and once I'm happy with the amount of Worn Lipstick I've got on there, I will bring in the Festive Berries and just darken up the very tips of the letters. Really gently blending that on. And then while that's all drying, I am going to move on to the colouring of my images. So I have got these little foxes from Fox Costumes Befores and Afters. I've actually cut these out with my silhouette machine. I don't have the matching dies, but you could quite easily stamp these images out and fussy cut them. I did put the two stamps together to make it look like one stamp, but you could quite easily cut them out separately if you've got the dies and stick the present onto the fox. I just wanted to use these stamps in a slightly different way. So using my E30 markers, this is Copic friendly cardstock stamped with Tuxedo Black ink, Memento brand, and I'm coming in with some E markers for the actual faces and the bodies, and then I've got some C markers. I am currently slowly switching out my chow markers for sketch markers. It makes it a lot easier when I'm filming to have those caps on the screen so you can see what colours I'm using. Just finishing up that part with my E markers, and I'm coming in with my BG markers for the present. And I will be repeating these colours on both of the foxes I use so that I have a nice coordinated look. I've got some B markers or BG markers. Or one's BG, and I think one's BG01 and one's BG000. I will have all of the colours also listed here down in the description box of the video if you're interested. And here is where I'm bringing in a more of a purple pink, and you'll see when I put these against my background colour, didn't really think through the way the colours were going to work together. So I do have to switch up the colour of my background. I'm just colouring in with some more E30 markers, but slightly lighter colours on the top of the face. And you will see I am using some tip to tip here just to help those colours blend together nicely. A little bit of pink, a little bit R32 and R30 in the inside of the ears. And I went ahead and coloured that other fox exactly the same E markers as the previous fox. I'm still bringing in those RV markers to help them look very similar and make it look all nice and coordinated. The E40s are one of my favourite browns. I just really love the way they blend together. They do seem to blend together quite seamlessly and don't really have too much effort involved. So I've got a nice chocolate frosting cupcake, a little bit of E markers on the tip of the tail, leaving it quite light. I go in and colour in that frosting on the top of his head. Some more R markers for the cherry on the top. And bringing back in those BG markers for the sprinkles. And then that finishes up the colouring. Really happy with that. And then I'm going to take this Quilted Heart backdrop die, and I believe this is the portrait version. Now there you can see my cardstock isn't cut to the right size, so I did go ahead and cut it up through my die cut machine. Going to pierce out these little hearts, which I find really therapeutic to watch myself. So I'm popping through all those little hearts, and I am going to have to trim this panel down. So I believe the finished panel size was 5 1/4 inches by 4 inches. So I did have to trim that down a little bit so that it was going to fit nicely on an A2 size card base with a nice white border around the edge. So not at the end of the world, but didn't plan on having the border around the edge, but it's only paper, so we can make it work. We don't get this far and then throw it in the bin. I had to carefully just trim that down until I was happy. And then this is where I kind of decided that my little images weren't going to work too well with that colour. So I bring them in, and I just felt like the pinks were, well, it's more of a mauve, and I decided to come back in with my distress inks, but this time I'm going to go all around the edge and drag or gently blend on and pull the colour in, so we still get that nice soft gradient effect towards the centre. And I really do think that that first layer of ink helped this third layer of ink sort of blend in really nicely, and I'm really happy with the finished result. I think this looks a lot better, coordinates a lot nicer. So just going all over, working around all sides. And I also did the same thing for that giant XOXO, just putting a little bit of the colour along the top and pulling it down. And I was much happy with how that was looking. So I went ahead and cut the XOXO from some just plain white cardstock and pop some glue on the back, and I'm going to layer this up, and I'm going to sort of offset them slightly so that you can see a little bit of that white shadow poking through, just to help lift that off of the heart panel that we're going to adhere it to in a moment. Just think it helps pop it off the page a little bit more. So now we're going to put a glue all over the back of that panel. And we're going to adhere that to our A2 sized card base. I just cut this and made it into a side folding card base. Make sure that's nicely stuck down, and then we are going to work on our sentiment. So I'm going to take some stamps or some sentiment stamps from the same stamps there as the foxes. So we're going to take these two different stamps and place them together. I have treated that cardstock with some anti-static powder. I'm going to come in with my Versamark ink, and we're going to stamp that sentiment. Lightly press it down, and I'm going to use my favourite white embossing powder. This is Ranger's super fine white embossing powder. Just tap away and wipe away any excess pieces of embossing powder and heat set that with my heat tool. Get that nice and glossy. I do wait half a second to a second or so to make sure that is completely dry and cooled down. And then going to go ahead with my guillotine and trim this down into a thin strip. I use that plastic guide along the edge to help line up and get a nice straight edge. I just find this a lot less fiddly than lining up dies. Just personally, I do use dies sometimes, sentiment strip dies, but sometimes for speed, I just like to get my guillotine trimmer out. Popping that XOXO onto my panel, making sure it's nicely stuck down. And then I can bring in my little foxes. So I'm going to pop some foam tape on the back. I've already gone ahead and done those and just taking off that backing paper. And I like to bring them in together. It just helps with placement for me. Making sure I get them in the centre. I did move that little fox over so that he was sitting nicely on those die cuts. Press down firmly to make sure they're nicely adhered. I'm adding some more foam tape to the back of my sentiment strip. This foam tape is really sticky. It seems to stick to everything. And I know you want it sticky, but this is quite hard to work with. So I'm going to have to look into getting some different foam tape. I'm going to bring back my card and make sure that I'm happy with how it's lined up. And once I'm happy, I'm going to press down firmly. And then some finishing touches with some white gel pen to add some highlights. Just here and there. And then I'm also going to come in and add some black jelly roll pen. This is a black glaze, just on the noses to help give them a little bit of shine. And that is this card complete. I really hope you enjoyed this video. I'm so glad to be back. I'd love for you to check out my other videos. I've got lots and I'm really excited to bring you some more videos over the next few months. I have my Pinterest and social media accounts linked below and I look forward to seeing you soon. Take care. Bye.